I have to say, like the stuff that you bake, they look pretty good. Do you like Photoshop them or are they all pretty natural?
But basically, what you see on Instagram is what you get in real life as well.
It's the one and only Digo Double G.
First, like what are some of the things that you do bake?
So there's like a pretty big variety of things that I can bake. One of the first baked goods that I made was a fruit tart. And so this was my senior year of high school. I decided I wanted to buy a fruit tart. And so to make a fruit tart, I first had to go buy a fruit tart pan. That fruit tart pan's like $20. You have to buy flour, cream cheese, heavy cream, bunch of fruit. I think after I bought everything, the total came out to like maybe $50 or something. And so after I spent $50 on baking a fruit tart, I was like, well, I can't just not bake anymore, right? I mean, I gotta get some good ROI out of the $50 that I spent. And so that's part of the reason why I actually got into baking, along with it being a creative outlet for myself. But some of the things I've baked include like cheesecake, mochi, macarons. I baked pineapple cakes and various Asian breads as well.
And how do you like decide what to bake?
For me, it's just like if there's desserts out there, I'm just like, oh, that's something I can make. Or when I'm at a bakery, right, I look at what they sell and then sometimes I'll buy it just to see what it tastes like. And then I think to myself whether I can recreate something like that or not. So if I see some dessert that's really intriguing to me, I think the first thing I do is I go online, I see if anybody else has made any recipes, and then I'll take a look at those recipes first. And maybe the first time I make it, I'll just use their recipe just to have a baseline to understand what it tastes like compared to what the professional pastry shops or bakery shops are making, right? I think for me, when I make a dessert, like especially when I just started baking, everything I made before I would take it to somewhere like a small group or take it to work or take it to school for my friends, I'd actually bake everything twice. So I bake it, the first run is for myself to try it. And then if there's anything that I thought was wrong or if it's underbaked or, it's too sweet, then the second time I baked, I would make some adjustments. But what I found is that to make the perfect baked good generally takes 3 attempts. Because the first attempt you do it, some things are wrong. The second time you try to make some changes and then you see what that tastes like. And then the third time you basically, you can get a pretty finalized product that'll pretty much come out every single time.
When it comes to baking, there are some baseline things that you need to know. What are those like baseline things?
So I think when you look at baking, the number one thing that pops out to me when baking is that baking is a very precise, it's a very high precision thing that you do. If you're cooking, I think it's very easy to just eyeball things. You add salt to taste, you add pepper to taste. If something's undercooked, you just keep cooking it. But that's not the same, I would say, for baking. If you look at baking, I see baking more as like chemistry, where the temperature that the oven's at matters, the temperature of the ingredients matters. A lot of times when you're working with butter, you have to use softened butter, which means you've taken it to room temperature for 30 minutes to an hour versus having cold, hard butter. A lot of times if you make cheesecake, it's better to have cream cheese that comes to room temperature. When you're baking cookies, if you just bake the dough directly after you're done mixing it, sometimes the cookies will spread out too much and it'll be too thin. And so what you need to do is you put the cookie dough in the fridge for 15, 30 minutes. It makes it a little cooler so that when you bake it, it doesn't spread out as much. So I think when you look at baking, it's just a very precise method to everything you do. And you have to be very cognizant of, how much you're mixing things in certain manners, how much you're whipping, egg whites or heavy cream, because the amount, like if you whip something to soft peaks versus stiff peaks, it does make a difference in the final texture of the dessert. So I think there's just a lot more precision in everything you do, and you need to be very exact. I recommend following all recipes to a T. I think it's fine to make some substitutions, but in terms of how long it bakes or how much cups of the ingredient you use, I would highly recommend following the recipe, at least for the first time, until you get more experience baking. Brownie, red bean mochi, cheesecake. I think those are good like starter desserts that you can make that are fairly easy.
For people who want to follow you, where can they follow you?
So you can take a look at my Instagram. My Instagram handle is George's Treats. So it's like gorgeous, but George's.
Welcome to George's Treats video Instagram recipe for an Asian-inspired ube vanilla sponge cake. The first step we have here is separating 6 egg whites and yolks. You will need 2 separate mixing bowls for this. First, we'll take the yolk mixture and mix in vegetable oil, salt, sugar, water, and vanilla extract. After you mix all this together, we'll be working on the egg whites. First, we start beating the egg whites, and once it starts getting foamy, we can add the sugar and cream of tartar and beat until stiff peaks. Next, we sift the flour, baking powder, and cornstarch and add it into the yolk mixture. Here, we have beaten the egg whites and they have been beaten into stiff peaks, as you can see. We will fold this meringue into the yolk batter in 3 portions. We'll actually be dividing this batter in half after it's mixed in. Once the batter is divided in half, we will add 1 teaspoon of ube extract into 1 portion and gently mix so that we have 2 separate vanilla and ube batters. We will now alternate in adding the vanilla and ube batter into the cake pan, and we'll keep doing this with a 1/3 cup until we have run out of batter to make the zebra pattern in the cake pan. We will then be baking this in a water bath at 340 degrees for 20 minutes, and then reducing that temperature down to 320 degrees for another 55 minutes. Happy baking!